O Hunter Entrevista de hoje tem um convidado extremamente especial. Amigo meu, internacional, ele vem de Nova York e ele veio para o Brasil para contar um pouco para a gente do mercado automotivo e das coisas que acontecem globalmente no mundo dos executivos. Eu estou falando aqui de Brent Dewar. Vou fazer uma introdução em inglês e a partir de agora a nossa entrevista vai ser nessa língua. Espero que todos vocês apreciem essa conversa e tenho certeza que o Brent traz para a gente muitas informações extremamente relevantes e interessantes. Brent was born in Canada and he lives in the United States, actually in New York, with his family, which is a great family. His wife is Brazilian and his daughter is Olivia. She's Chinese and she's so cute. And actually, Brent used to work for GM for 30 years. His last position was the former Vice President of Sales and Marketing, and he was responsible for the Chevrolet brand for over 130 countries. So he has a lot to tell us about this marketing, right? Brent was also formerly head of marketing and sales in Brazil for 6 years. So he knows a lot about our country, our culture, and that's the way I think he's gonna put the information considering worldwide and also Brazil. Brent, so good to have you here, and it's a pleasure and an honor, and I hope you enjoy our conversation and you enjoy your time talking to the Brazilian people.
Bueno, o prazer é todo meu. Desculpe, gente, my Portuguese is very rusty, so Anna's been gracious enough to let us do this interview in English. But I'll do better in Portuguese next time, I promise.
Okay, your Portuguese is perfect. But anyway, let's keep in English, okay? I know you've been visiting a lot of places in the world considering automotive marketing, especially the auto shows places. And I know we had the auto show in Brazil recently, and you were there this week, right? And I would appreciate if you can tell us what the differences you see between Brazil and United States, for example, or all the auto shows you've been visiting, and actually, what was the most impressive things you see here in Brazil?
Well, Anna, as part of my function with Courland International, I have the advantage or luxury to go to the global shows around the world in Paris and Geneva, Tokyo, Beijing, etc., New York. And I was very pleased to come back to São Paulo. They hold the show every 2 years. And so I was here in '94 when the show was just starting. And I guess what I felt a lot of pride when I saw the show, because I've always known the importance of the Brazilian market. But truly, the auto show is world class. I think for any of the people that get the opportunity to visit São Paulo and to go to the salon, I think they'll be very impressed, because not only are there world class products, the best products from every brand in the world, but also the display, the stands. It will be very similar to what you will see if you went to Geneva or Paris. So, I mean, that filled me with a lot of pride, because it's no longer a local show. Many of the top chief executives from Volkswagen, from General Motors, from Ford, all came to São Paulo to not only participate in the show, to make important announcements, whether they be products or whether they be investments in the country.
Well, actually, that brings me the idea of having the Brazil in the root of growth and in the root of, you know, having Brazil as one of the largest marketing in the world. And considering this for the automotive market, how do you see Brazil in this route? And if you could compare actually Brazil with other marketings such as Mexico and India, how would you put this?
I think it's a great question. I mean, I think for a lot of people, they don't realize that Brazil has been an important market for many years. And so many manufacturers like General Motors and Ford and Fiat and Volkswagen have been producing in Brazil for 80, 85 years. And so to a lot of the newer manufacturers, they see now the potential that these other companies have been investing many years ago. And that's what's attracting the market, because if you look at the regional trade bloc of South America, almost 60% of the sales of all of South America are in Brazil. So Brazil offers not only an opportunity to bring your best products to consumers, It also is a source for outstanding talent, engineers, marketers, business people. And I think what they're seeing is what these other manufacturers learned a long time ago, that the talent is very good in Brazil. And they have great experience. They're bringing new investments to the country. And I think the other difference, Anna, is that Brazil is no longer a third world country market as a perception. It truly is an emerging market. And so it's a market of opportunities. It is the fourth largest, as you mentioned, and most of the manufacturers are forecasting by 2015 that the market will grow to about 4 million. And so when you have challenges in markets like Europe, Asia starting to slow down, that makes it very appealing to re-look at Brazil, look at the opportunities to participate in the growth for the next 4 to 20 years.
But for example, when we compare Brazil to India, we know there are a lot of great talents also, and probably the cost of Brazil is higher. How do you think we can manage that, even considering Brazil is emerging and has a lot of opportunity here?
Yeah, I think that's also a very good question. I mean, the challenge is twofold. One is Brazil is the producer of vehicles to be exported to the world. So when you talk about places like China, places like Mexico, Brazil, there's two parts to the challenge. One is the developing middle class that's been happening for the last 25 years in Brazil. So Brazil is attractive not just from a manufacturing standpoint to export. It's attractive because it's a large country, 160, 170 million people in Brazil. When you see a developing middle class and upper class, their ability to consume products is strong. So I think the difference here is you have a strong domestic base, and you have a strong base of high quality manufacturer, so that if you need to export to other markets that don't have the capacity to produce, Brazil is an excellent alternative. That becomes a dilemma, because you want the economy to improve to allow the consumers to continue to consume, but you must maintain your competitive on a cost basis to be able to compete with export markets like Mexico, like Korea, like China. So it's an interesting dilemma, and so it's very positive, but at the same time, very challenging to find the right balance.
And besides that, we know the executive salaries here in Brazil have been getting higher and higher and higher. And if we can compare with the American standard point for this subject, how would you compare? Do you think we make more money here in Brazil than in the US? It's the same, it's growing. What is happening now?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to talk in averages, but I think as a direction, Brazil was always very low-cost competitive, a low-cost market in terms of labor costs. So what comes with prosperity is a prosperity to the economy. And that's good news. That's terrific news, because as the economy prospers, people can consume more goods, whether they're telephones, computers, cars, whatever. So that's good news. So I would say the Brazilian salaries are definitely higher than when I was here from '94 to 2000 on a relative basis. From an external market, maybe not as competitive, and it is a concern to some businesses in terms of being able to compete with other lower cost markets in labor cost. But still on a basis for, in comparison to other international markets like Europe or US, it's still very competitive. I think the challenge for a lot of global companies is to become as local as possible. And I think that's what Brazil has to offer. It has a great education system. It's got a great talent pool of individuals, that many have 20 more plus years of experience working with global automotive companies. And to allow the growth of the Brazilian leaders in this country or other countries around the world, that makes them very competitive. Because when I came here, most of the companies had foreign leaders leading the departments, the key departments. What you see today, many of those people are and should be Brazilians, because it's their time and their opportunity. So if you compare a local Brazilian leader with all the skills and capabilities to a foreign person working in the country, then in that basis, on a comparison basis, it's very competitive. And I think that's, again, the opportunity, the transitional opportunity. So I see much more opportunities here in Brazil as they develop their people and develop their class. And I think that's the next challenge, is to get the right skill sets, the right motivations, the right preparation for the future to allow the Brazilian leaders to continue to grow and to be able to manage and run these companies, whether they be national companies or whether they be multinational.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, as a head of Courland International in Americas, Brent, I understand you have a lot of global accounts, so you can see executives from around the world, and you know how they, have been educated, you know how they have the strengths, you know what kind of weaknesses they have. And I would like you to tell us, how do you see the Brazilian professionals? What are the most weaknesses and what are the most strengths they have here?
Yeah, I mean, what gets me excited about my job is I get to go to all these wonderful countries in the world, and I'm continually to be inspired by the quality of the talent of people, young people coming through the colleges. So I think it bodes well for the future, and I think Brazil's a good example of that. And we mentioned about the education and the schools and the opportunities that they have. What was interesting for me when I lived here for 6 years, and I think for someone that doesn't know the Brazilian market, it's important to understand the culture. It's important to understand the work relationship. The Brazilians have a wonderful work ethic. I mean, they work very hard, very smart, very task-oriented, but also by the same token, they're very family-oriented. And I think as a leader, if you're going to work in this market, you want to find the right balance between those elements to really bring out the best. It was interesting, one of my very first sessions with my team when I came to Brazil, it was a challenging time. Inflation was 40% a month, interest rates were 7% real interest per month. And so every day, to me, just seemed unbelievable. I mean, just absolutely unbelievable. And I noticed my team always came to me with problems. And they would talk about, this is a problem, Sheffy, this is a problem. And I was thinking, wow, these people seem negative. But it was actually the opposite. What's great about the Brazilian culture is they're used to dealing with challenges. So if you let the team participate, so this is a participatory culture, and if I came with them with the answer, I was actually negating the advantage of my Brazilian team. If I came with them with a problem to help solve, the whole team would come together and to solve the problem. Because what the culture does is gets all of the problems on the table up front, and then they sit back, whether it's a Jeitinho Brasileiro or whatever, we all sit back and we decide, what are we going to do about this? I would say in all of my 30 years in working in the auto industry, the most innovative, most creative time was my 6 years in Brazil. And it made me a better leader. It made me a better executive, as long as I realized that I was not to have the answer. I was to participate. And sometimes I would be the decision maker, sometimes I'd be the editor, sometimes that might be my idea to start the process. And if I could approach it that way, and I've seen other successful companies in Brazil that harness the talent of what's uniquely Brazilian. And when they do that, they have success. If they come with, this is the program for my country, fill in all these, on these forums, let's do it this way, I would say your chances of success are less. You may be successful, but I think you're missing a big opportunity of what the Brazilian culture and the work ethic brings to the market. And I think that's the real key, and I think that's the strength. So now I see now 18 years later, and I see that same spirit is alive today as it was when I arrived in 1994. So I think that's what's unique about Brazil versus other markets. Hard work ethic, very innovative, very creative, and willing to solve problems. But also I think another part is the human side here. It's not a confrontational culture in terms of a work culture. They expect respect. They expect to understand what my role is, my life and my family. And if I can work that into the plan, I think that would be a very good work environment. And I think if you see that, I think that's important. Other cultures are very different. And it's very different when I worked in Canada or US, etc. But I think that's the strength of Brazil.
And what do you think we have to improve?
I think decisiveness. I think if there's a challenge, and it's not uniquely Brazilian, certain cultures are this way, it's because there has always been so much change in the country. And even though we're more stable today than you were in your past, it's still a very active economy, active things. Things change more quickly here than in other mature markets. So I think the ability to say, we have enough information, let's make our best decision today, because we can make another one tomorrow or the next day or next month. So I would say, I think from a global perspective, to adapt that decisiveness, the ability to see it, okay, we have enough, make our decision, and then adapt. I see this as an opportunity. And the more the Brazilian culture can move to that decisiveness, they'll be much more in sync with the external mature markets way of looking at things.
Okay. Well, actually, I cannot make jokes in English. That's why I'm not making any joke with you. But if you can, I would love to have a message of you from the Brazilian people, Brazilian professionals, actually for our audience. So if you can leave a message for us, I would be glad.
Well, if I could give one message, I would say, continue going forward with prosperity and innovation. I have a personal mantra I've lived my life, and I've taken it from the code from Albert Einstein, E equals MC squared. And for me, whatever you expect, the E, whatever you expect from your life or your business, is directly proportional to your mindset, that's the M, times your commitment squared. So what it means, if you're truly committed to something and you approach the project or life with a positive mindset, you'll not only achieve your goals, but exceed them, and that's the E. So remember, E equals MC squared. Okay. We refer to it jokingly as Dewar's theory of relativity, but Anna, it's been great to be with you today, and thank you very much for having me here.
I have to thank you, and I hope you to come back as many times as possible. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here.
Combinado.
Okay? Say hi to Olivia and Carolina for me. Okay?
Obrigado. Obrigado.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Obrigado. Até o próximo Hunter Entrevista.